Loving unavailable people is not proof that you're too much. And their inability to love you well is not proof that you are not enough. Welcome back to Unquiet You. Today we're going to talk about something I think a lot of people struggle with silently or carry a little bit of shame around, and it is trying to love someone who simply cannot meet them emotionally. This is a topic I think a lot of women struggle with, but I also think a lot of men struggle with this, and it is loving someone who is unavailable. And we want to absorb that as an us issue. We want to absorb that as if I love them a little bit harder, if I can communicate better, if I show up better, maybe I need to do more, maybe I need to be the one who's healing and doing the work, then they'll choose me. And the reality is all of those things can be true, right? Like all of those things, maybe you do need to work on yourself. Maybe there's things in your past with relationships that you can work on. I think I always say learning how to communicate is key in any relationship, romantically, friendship, child with your children, any relationship, business-wise, communication is key. And so maybe you do need to work on those. Maybe it's a situation where maybe you do need to not rush into a relationship. Maybe it is just about growing together and that sort of thing, getting to know each other. But I actually think a lot of it is not your capacity to love. I think sometimes there are going to be people that we want so badly to love that cannot love us back. And I think it's a really, really hard thing to swallow, because we can only fix us, right? So we can only change us. And so when someone is not responding to us or not showing us that love, our brains go to it's an us problem, when in fact it's just a them problem, and it's something that they have to work through. And there's a tons of reasons why. I think, I doing what I do for a living, I love to take someone's personality and really dig into why they act the way they do or certain things like that. But what I've learned as the older I get is that there are just some relationships that people are just not available for. And I have to be okay with that and learn that it's not about me, right? And so I think one of the ways to really, really look at this is, are you in a relationship where it's very hot and cold, right? Like maybe they're really, really on and then all of a sudden they're off. And then they're really, really on and then all of a sudden they're off. Or they make a lot of we're so close. We're almost in a relationship. We're almost to that point. We're almost there. Or I can see the potential. I hear this a lot. Well, I can see the potential in this person. Or they have all the things that I desire in a partner. They have the goals and they have all these things that I want, right? So we see the potential in what could be. There's a song out that I think about very often, because there's a line in it where she talks about that she saw the potential in this person that she once saw in herself. And I think it's a brilliant song and it's a brilliant line, because it talks about how she was giving this guy the hopes of I see the potential in you. But that was the same story she kept telling herself, was I see the potential in you. And so you better yourself. And her thinking was, if I better myself, I'll better you. And I do think we can have an amazing connection with people. I think this is one of those things where can be very confusing. I actually had a guy client recently ask me about this, and he was so confused that his connection with this woman he was dating, was so strong, but he couldn't make the relationship work. And he kept going over and over and over of what he was doing wrong and all of the things. And he kind of started smothering her in a way, because he kept thinking, if I do more, if I overexplain, if I overshow up, if I overdo the gifts, if I overdo the dinners, he was doing all the things. And their connection was very, very good. And she would admit that they had a very strong connection, but she could never get over that hump of taking them to the next level. And she would be very hot and cold. They would get very close and she would pull away. And then they would get very close and she would pull away. And so then his brain is constantly, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I said this one day and she was fine. And then the next day I said the same thing and she got mad and didn't talk to me for a week or something like that. And so I think it's just that sometimes in life, we can have connections with people who are just at their lowest availability. And when they're that way, we have to accept that that's where their current capacity is. And until something shifts inside of them, their capacity can't change. And when we are able to see that, I see, we've all been through it. And I see a lot of young girls going through it. And we've all been there where your heart's been broken. You thought this person was the person and then it didn't work out to be the person, or you had really high hopes in the beginning, because we all know, right, that relationships in the beginning, they're fun and exciting. And there's that that fire inside where it's like, I can't wait for them to call, or I get excited to see them. And then as the relationship goes, right, we fizzle out, not because we don't feel that way, but we get more comfortable and you're seeing them more and all the things. But I think a lot of times what's happening is people get that fire and they have that big burst of excitement and that big burst of like feelings and emotions that they haven't felt, and they just want more of it. And the other person backs away. The other person will like pull back. And immediately the very first thought, every client who comes to me with an issue of a relationship is, what am I not doing? What have I done wrong? Or why am I not enough? And it's understanding that when people are at their lowest availability when it comes to romantic relationship emotions or friendships, but right now I'm talking about the romantic relationships. When you're at your lowest availability, your capacity is only so big, and it's just, it can't change until something in your availability shifts. This is why I think a lot of times when people get divorced, you see one party like jump into a really quick relationship, but it's an easy relationship where there's no like emotion. There's nothing deep. We can keep it surface. We can have fun. There's no high expectations, because they love to say things like, well, I just got divorced, or I'm not looking for something serious. They keep that availability at a very small amount. And women love to be the ones, I think this is happening more and more to men too, but I think women love to be the ones that are like, I'm going to change them. I'm going to love them so much that their life is going to be full and they're going to want to be with me and all of the things. And so I think if we can stop looking at this as a personal failure, when a relationship doesn't work, there might be times, I always say, like, I think it always takes two to tango in any relationship, right? So I do think there's things to step back and say, okay, where can I see the work on me that needs to be done? Like, what do I need to shift? Maybe I need to work on, maybe I'm too needy. Like, why am I too needy? What is it that I need to work on myself? But it's not a personal failure. We link relationship breakups to personal failures way too much. And you can't have a personal failure when someone on the other end is in charge of their own emotions. So we can't create the person that we want to be with. We don't get to tell them what to think and what to say and how to feel. And we don't get to go back and correct all their past relationships. Or, a lot of people bring relationships from their family. Like, I saw my parents do this and I feel like I'm going down that same road, or I'm really scared of commitment because of this. And we don't get to fix those things for people, but we also have to stop taking them on as personal failures. I had a client recently, the same client, and we really sat back and looked at all the ways he showed up for her and all the things that he did that he was very proud of doing, because it showed him that he was the person that he truly wanted to be. He was the person that was showing up for him, and he had done so much work on himself that he showed up in the relationship as that best version of him. And he finally understood she just wasn't ready. She just was not available for that. And it still hurt. I mean, he still had his thoughts about it and his emotions, which I think are great, because that means that he cared. And I always say, like, if a relationship ends and you don't have emotions and you don't care, then you were never really in it to begin with. And, I also believe that I always tell people I would rather love 1,000 times and get my heart broken than never love and always have somebody next to me. So I think that, when we can learn that this is not about us. Sometimes it's about them and it's about them being unavailable. We can see people as humans, and every one of us goes through a very different life, right? Like every one of us has different experiences and we have different thoughts and we have different desires. And it doesn't mean anything less about us when we're not picked. I think sometimes people want to say, well, they didn't choose me. And the reality is they didn't choose themselves. So if you're not choosing yourself and you're not creating the life internally that you want, there's no way you can choose someone else fully. And if someone's not willing to choose me fully, why would I want to be with them? And so I think, this client has really taken that to heart, and he sees that now. Like, he feels really good about himself, and he knows that the right person is going to come at the right time. It's not, he also knows he's not willing to settle. And I think a lot of times that's what we do in our brain is we have the thought, what if we don't ever meet anyone else? And then you play the game of the hot and cold, the patterns of, I very much am a pattern person. And so when people show me patterns, Maya Angelou has a quote that said, when people show you who they are, believe them. And I stick to that in every arena of my life, because I do believe that when people show you who they are, that's who they are. And until they're willing to make a shift, it doesn't matter what you do, that nothing's gonna change them. So I want you to also realize that you cannot build a deeply connected relationship with someone who's completely disconnected from themselves. It will never work. And you're never going to be able to connect them to themselves. That is a them job. So I hope that if you can see that who you're becoming and the kind of love you want to give reflects the kind of love you give yourself, the kind of love that you show up in the world to give, to be. I think that when we are the person that we desire to be, and our energy shows it, and our love for our friends and our family shows it, I believe the right partner comes into our lives. I believe the wrong partner can stay in our lives really too long if we're constantly trying to fix them by fixing us. And when we can release them as humans and understand that sometimes people are going to be emotionally unavailable, and that is okay, then we're able to be emotionally available for the right thing coming into our life. So if this has been a hard season for you in relationships, or maybe you've gotten out of a relationship, or maybe you're struggling to get out of a relationship because there is a lot of hot and cold, and there is a lot of emotionally unavailable people in your life, or the person that you're dating. And I had a client a few months ago. She had a bad breakup, but she kept blaming his lack of emotional availability on his family. And I could understand her perspective, but again, she was looking to blame something on the outside because she couldn't see him as having anything wrong. Like, she didn't see him as the one who had to do the work on themselves. And I don't think he was in a place where he wanted to at the moment. He enjoyed not having a commitment. He enjoyed the not being emotionally available, and that was okay for him, but she didn't want to accept that that was his choice. She wanted to find blame. It didn't work when she found it on herself. So then all of a sudden it was his parents. And then it was like she kept looking outside of him. And when she finally realized that it didn't matter what she did or who she blamed or how hard she loved him, he was not ready to be emotionally available to her. She was able to release him without looking at him in a negative light, that sometimes people are just not where we're at, and that's okay. So I hope you understand that my biggest thing I tell my clients is when you love yourself, love comes to you in every way, shape, and form with all the people in your life, not just a romantic partner. So I hope that you have a great week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, for being a little louder, a little bolder, and a whole lot more you. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you subscribed, left a review, and sent it to someone you think might need it. As always, stay unquiet.